I'm talking like generational scarcity has creeped in my family.
Well, that's because everything what we're born with is what we genetically inherit.
Yes.
What happens is what we experience in life is epigenetics, and that's what changes our face.
Whoa, guys, did you just hear that? What we are born with is genetics.
Right.
What we inherit through stories and experiences, epigenetics.
For example, you've got this deep line right here, and when it's that deep and it's that pronounced, it's usually a sign of an engineer, an attorney, or a doctor. And his wife started laughing. She's like, he's a doctor. So you can make those leaps once you understand what each of the feature means, but it's rare that it actually defines a career, but that's one of the ones that you can tell that's deep, intense, Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours of study type thing.
I love that.
Yeah.
What's up, everybody? Another amazing episode of the D2D podcast. We have a guest, and I'm going to talk to you guys about this in 2 seconds, but a couple announcements. We got the recruiting summit coming up October 20th through the 22nd. San Diego, don't miss out. We've already are halfway sold out, so go get your ticket. It's exclusive, just on recruiting. We got Door-to-Door Con coming up, so save the dates. January 19th through the 21st, Salt Lake City, Utah, our 6th annual. Our speakers will be announced here soon. Super excited for some of the speakers coming out, and maybe we'll talk about those on this podcast. So if you keep listening, I will seed the speakers, and this will be the first debut of who's coming this year to Door-to-Door Con. And then we have... just some cool stuff coming up. So just make sure you got October, Peru. We've got Switzerland coming up with their mastermind. Some really cool stuff happening with us and some of our online training platform. We just had alarm content come out, some new live hidden camera stuff. So pay attention to our social media channels. If you don't subscribe, at DDD Experts on YouTube, on Instagram, and such. So I just want to give that little plug. But guys, today I met a guy for the first time who spoke at my event last week. Was that last week?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 weeks ago, we had Brian Galkey come in. Bradley was like, hey, I got this guy. We got to have him speak. I was like, all right. So he comes in as a guest speaker at Closer School Live, and I watch him, and I'm like, oh my gosh, where has this guy been? Like, I'm writing a book right now, and I talked about it yesterday, actually.
Okay.
And it's called The Self-Experience, and it's about profiling and identifying your genius and understanding your like who you are so you can better operate your superpower. Right. And Brian's superpower is teaching people to facial analytics. So like read people's faces.
Correct.
And he runs a company called Subtleskills, and he goes around speaking and has an online course and helps people, whether you're at the front desk or you're a VP or owner of a business, whether you're recruiting, whether you're selling, whether you're just trying to have an interaction, even just like with a female. And we talk all about, sales tips on these, and we talk about recruiting, and we talk about strategy. And it's always been said 60 to 70% of your communication is nonverbal. And so being able to sell people through understanding who they are, understanding what their interests are, how they want to be sold is so critical. And to watch Brian, there's a long-winded intro, but like to watch Brian go and teach a facial reading and understanding, modalities and interests and backgrounds and fears and likes. And he's gonna read my face. Literally, if you're watching this on video, we're gonna get my face read.
Right.
And he doesn't know me very well, right? He spoke at this one event. We talked for 5 minutes, and now he's speaking at my mastermind next week in Dallas.
Right.
But you'll watch what he does. We're gonna, and we'll have him read my media guys too, Christian. Right. He doesn't know my media guy. We'll have him pick out Christian too. It'll be fun.
Right.
So welcome to the show, D2D Podcast. Yeah. Flew all the way from Dallas to be here.
Correct.
And this is gonna be fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we just met 2 weeks ago. Sat through the event, and when I go to an event, I love it because not only do you get up and teach people something, but I'm over there taking notes at the same time and screenshots and everything else. So that's what I really love about it. But yeah. Great event.
So when did you realize you wanted to facial read analytics? Like when did that become interesting for you?
Pure circumstance. Growing up, kind of an introvert, like I mentioned earlier. So I was always picking up books on body language, NLP, you name it, anything that could help me, right? Because what does a good introvert do? Well, I'll pick up a book and I'll learn more instead of actually interacting with people. And in 2011, a girl was supposed to come in and we are going to go to, a friend of mine was coming in town. She's like, hey, let's do dinner. I showed up at the restaurant, ordered a glass of wine, and she called. She's like, hey, I'm not going to make it. And I said, oh, here we go, right? And she's like, no, you need to come meet this guy. And I'm like, no, I already sat down. I'm just going to be stubborn. I'm going to have my dinner. She said, no, you need to come meet this guy. And that person was Mac Fulford. And he's my mentor. And I went over to this event. He was the keynote speaker. And he immediately read my face. I'm like, wait, what is this? And he's like, yeah, it goes all the way back to the Greeks and Aristotle. And it's based on physiognomy. And that is, there's 42 muscles in the face. And as the mind creates movement, movement creates muscle. And so your face alters over time. And I thought, this guy's full of it, right? So there were 8 other people at dinner, and he read everybody's face. And I was like, okay, these are going to be Barnum statements, generic things like, oh, you've had a hard time in life. Well, who hasn't?
Yeah.
I was waiting to bust this guy because I thought there's no way this is a legitimate thing. And he read something different on all 8 people. And I was hooked instantly. I'm like, okay, I have to go get his book. He lived in Fort Worth. I live in Dallas. That's about an hour apart. And I would drive twice a month. He'd have these little classes and I would go and just keep learning. So it started with his book, then getting to spend time with him. Then he had a certification. And so in 2012, I got certified. And then what happened was I was on the help desk at the time, because what does a good introvert do is you pick jobs where people have to come to you. So I've always been a bouncer, a bartender. I worked retail, you name it. So I learned how to interact with people, but I didn't have to be the proactive one about it, right? And once I started learning this skill, it helped me in so many different ways. I went from help desk to a regional vice president of sales, all because I focused on everybody else and not on me.
So any introvert listening to this, hopefully this will resonate with you. It's being able to, when you're an extrovert, it's the attention is on you. It's like, how do I be the star?
Correct.
And I interviewed another guy, Matt Pollard, on he wrote a book, The Introvert or Seller or something like that. And he talked about like the strength of an introvert in a sales role.
Yes.
And because you can start to make it about them, it actually creates a level of trust that an extrovert might be overlooking, because it's all about them. And they're like, what's behind the man? Like, where's he sleazy and where's his snake oil skills?
Yes.
Because he's so good at talking.
Right.
And, that's something to be said. So inspiring to the introverts, hope to the introverts, to go to become the regional vice president, that's a big accomplishment.
Yes. And
it's about how do you now, so think of like all the years you've been in sales and all the years you've been managing salespeople.
Right.
I'm excited for this. So in case you didn't catch that, guys, literally without knowing somebody, you can look at your face, the 42 muscles, the different attributes of eyes, nose, lip size, eyebrows, forehead size, ear placement to jawlines, hair colors, down to all of that, and say, you're this, I'm assuming. And it's like, oh my gosh.
Yes. Well, and the best part for introverts are you can go to LinkedIn, social media, and you can find the person you're going to meet with first and kind of analyze their face. So when you walk in, you feel like I'm already prepared, right? Because that's what introverts want. They want tricks and tips and things that when they walk in, what can they put in their tool belt, right? And that's what I do with people is I can use it proactively, and I can go and research somebody. And I always start with LinkedIn, but not everybody updates their LinkedIn profile all the time. So sometimes they're 5 years old, 10 years old. So I start with LinkedIn, but then I go to their social media because that's a fresh picture. And when you spend the time and effort to think, here's what I want to say, but that's not what's important. It's how would you best understand it, that it changes the dynamic. So have you ever read Man's Search for Meaning, the book by Viktor Frankl?
Yeah.
Okay, so for anybody who hasn't read that, it's all about when he was watching the people who went through this atrocious situation, the people who made it about, I want to see my mother, I want to see my wife, I want to see my kids again, outlast everybody who just thought, I want to survive. And that's the real trick about life is when you learn to focus on other people, where this day and age we're distracted by smart watches and smart cell phones and everything else, giving someone your time and attention changes the dynamic of the situation.
100%.
Yeah.
So there's 3 directions, and you can tell me which direction you want to go.
Sure.
One is, oh God, freak. Bah! I don't know. I will pick one.
They're all 3.
So first one is you mentioned facial changing, most updated photo, meaning these are muscles based on how you smile, speak, live, that changes your actual facial structure.
Absolutely.
And so this hit home, which I didn't think about this. I did a before and after picture where I looked at pictures of me 6, 7, 8 years ago, and I put it side by side of me today.
Yes.
Just recently. And I'm like, wow, I am way better looking, way happier looking,
Right.
way different. Like, I'm like, wow, I'm a different human. And it's because I was in a miserable marriage. Like
Right.
I was, you know, going through a lot of counseling, and you went through a similar thing recently, same kind of timeline, right?
Yep.
Where we
Absolutely.
both got divorced around the same time,
Yes.
right? And it's been interesting because I asked you, I was like, are you happier? Are you know, doing okay? Was it, you know, mutual? And we both were like, yeah, life is great, right? Like, so.
Yeah, it's funny because we are all natural born face readers without knowing it.
Yeah.
Because we learned about it through books, right? So when we're kids, we have to read books in junior high and high school and everything else. Well, older books didn't have photography. And so what happened is authors and artists used to take courses on physiognomy so they could learn how to describe the characters in the book. So if you think about reading a book, how did you know who was the good guy and who was the bad guy? It was through their actions and through their facial features. And if you turn on a Disney show, you can actually just hit mute and you know who's the hero and who's the villain immediately, right? And you don't know why it's instinctive. It's because we've been taught it our whole life through our language, right? So if you say things like keep a stiff upper lip, that means don't share your emotions. So if somebody has a flatter upper lip, they don't like it if you ask them a lot of personal questions right off the bat. But even beyond that, like you were talking about looking at pictures of yourself, that's in part of my presentation when I'm speaking, is I show a picture of me at 18 and 38 and let people see all the differences in my face, right? But when you talk about, well, when you're unhappy, you frown. And so eventually your mouth can turn down. And so you can look at somebody and say, okay, they've got a downturned mouth. They're a trust but verify person. They're not really a jovial, just trusting person, because you tend to mistrust when you have that facial feature there. So that's why when you look at yourself, you can look at people who've quit a job they hate, they've ended a relationship that they just weren't happy in, and they look more alive, right? They've got more energy in their cheeks are wider, their mouth turns back up again, their eyes can actually angle back up. All kinds of things can happen to you over time.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like the picture of me, my eyes used to angle down because I was raised in a very loving household, but they could always tell me like, what was the potential downside versus what are the positives, right? So they're always like,
they were more pessimistic first, leading with pessimism or worst case scenario versus leading with best case scenario.
Correct. Like, hey, just think about what you're doing. What are the consequences? And so that's how I was raised, right? And then as I got into more personal development, my eyes actually angled up. So both of the pictures in my old one angled down. And I could always tell you what could go wrong with anything. And then once I got into it, my eyes just changed a little bit. So
that is crazy.
I'll show you the picture later.
But people don't like, you know, and it's like, you just look happier. And it's like, yeah, because you can, my facial structure is changing. That's buck wild. Okay. So you said 42 things. What are some of the things, like the main, maybe 5 to 10 that you look at quickly to be like, okay, I can identify them pretty quick?
Sure. So I always start with eyebrows. And the reason I start with eyebrows is because eyebrows lead to eye contact. So going back to being the introvert, when people are afraid to make eye contact, well, then you can kind of cheat and look at their eyebrows and think, what shape of eyebrows do they have, or how high or low are they? And you're giving eye contact to the person on the other side.
Oh, because then you're not like, why are they looking at my teeth?
Exactly. Right. Well, and if you think about it, sales is always taught that, look at the forehead if you get nervous. But now you're actually adding something to it and thinking about the person, and they can feel that. And so when you're thinking like, how do I best talk with this person? Looking at eyebrows, you get credit for the eye contact at the same time.
Cool.
And eye contact is what creates that connection. So people want 3 or 4 things in life, right? Physical safety, emotional safety. They want to feel seen and heard, and they want to feel connected. Well, the seen and heard, when I'm giving you my time and attention, you feel seen. And then if I can convert what I see into speaking your language, then they feel heard, and that's what creates that connection.
Love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got eyebrows. What else?
So I do eyebrows, shape, and height. Upper eyelid, eye angle.
Upper eyelid meaning distance between, or is it that fold?
So it's how full is their upper eyelid. So when you see a lot of full upper eyelid on someone, they're a we person. So if I see that person, they've got a big fuller upper eyelid, I know I need to say we statements. Hey, where are we going? What are we gonna do? They like inclusive language, because the fuller upper eyelid are people who enjoy doing things with other people. Yeah, the less lid you see, then the more eye you can see, right? So the more they think in terms of eye. Hey, I'm going to go do this. Hey, I'm going to go do that.
What do I have on the eyelids?
You've got a little bit of eyelid, but you don't have a lot. You'll know somebody when they have fuller eyelids. So
interesting, because it's right.
Yeah.
I'm much more of a lone wolf. I'm much more of I don't like partners. I'm like, do my thing.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So people...
Because the natural response, like if somebody just assumed Sam without looking at my eyelids,
Right.
they probably would think the other way around.
Oh, 100%. They see
based
you
on what I'm doing. Yeah.
what you do. You know, you have a good following
crazy.
of people who are always with you. And that's the thing, is people who don't have a lot of upper eyelid, they're fine if people want to join, but it's not required. Like a full upper eyelid, they always want somebody to do something with them. So if you want to make somebody happy that's got that fuller upper eyelid, you're like, hey, where are we going to go later? Or hey, I'm going to go do this. You want to come with me? They're like, yeah, I want to come with you. And so it's literally like the book, The 5 Love Languages.
Yeah.
You know what your face says about you.
The 5 eyelids is the next book, guys.
Exactly.
Just kidding. Keep going.
and then you look at the other person, you think, okay, how do we interact? So you mentioned earlier, like, I've never even used a dating app, but during the pandemic, all my friends would send me pictures of people and ask me to look at their faces. So I actually created lookingforloveinallthewrongfaces.com, and it's just a very cheap dating course.
Yes.
Because
I love this.
Yeah, because people can lie on their thing. Like, it's like a little resume,
you say
right?
your own little resume, but it's like, look at your pictures and
Exactly,
your
right.
face will say one thing.
Yeah, so it'll look at, and so for example, because you don't have a lot of upper eyelid, let's say you went to go meet someone that you were really attracted to, but they have a very full upper eyelid. Well, then what you'd have to say is, hey, I kind of like to run the lone wolf, right? I'll absolutely dedicate a day of the week that we can go do things together, but a lot of times I need my own space. So imagine when you can have that conversation up front, how much time are you going to save versus what you don't discuss with somebody and it's a problem later.
Wow. Okay, so you got eyelids and you said eye shape.
Eyebrow shape,
Yeah.
eyebrow height, full or thin upper eyelids,
Okay.
then eye angle, which we talked about earlier. So if their eyes angle up, they see they're the optimist, even keel, and tend to see the downside.
Okay.
Right. So if you're talking to somebody, let's go outside the romantic side. Let's say you go and you're dealing with a business person whose eyes angle down, and I'm going to blow your mind in a minute because there's the professional side and the personal side of your face. But let's say they both angle down just for ease of conversation. And then, if you're presenting something to them, you talk about the problems that you had to overcome, because in the back of their mind, they're always thinking, well, what about this? Well, what about that? Have they thought about it? So when I used to do presentations for technology, I would go and talk about, well, this is our 3rd or 4th version of this software because we worked out the bugs on the first ones, and that's how we got. Then I slowly talked about the positive side as well.
Yeah, we had all these problems initially,
Exactly.
and honestly, like our competition was doing this, and we really, ran into these issues, and we wanted to make sure that we checked crossed the T's, dotted all the I's, because we knew that potential legal battles,
Absolutely.
and they're just like, oh wow, like. And this is what we then found. And like,
exactly.
Versus like, I'll tell you what this is going to be. We're going this place. We're going this place. They're like, wow, have you not thought of all the I love, okay, good. I can see it.
Now here's the challenge. If you went to somebody whose eyes angled up and you came in with only the negatives first, they mentally shut down.
Yeah, they're like, why is this guy so Debbie Downer,
Exactly,
dude? Like, what the
right.
freak?
Yes.
So do my eyes angle up or down?
So it's hard to see because the mountains in here are so bright. So here's what I can see from here, because with the blinding light from that way, is eyebrows, I can't make out the shape. So we talked about this earlier. They're called chameleon eyebrows. That is, I have to get closer to you to see what the shape of your eyebrows are. And here's what everybody's going to think is, why do eyebrows matter? If you saw my presentation, go and Google people without eyebrows. Just Google it. And they take all the celebrities and they shave off their eyebrows and make them look, and everybody looks like an alien. Like, you don't even know how to interact or approach the person.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'll show you a picture of that in a minute. We'll Google it. It's insane, because when you see celebrities without eyebrows, you're like, ooh, you're repulsed for a minute. It's very strange. But yeah, so then people are drawn into you, right? And then your eyebrows are close to your eyes. So in part of our language, we talk about highbrow humor and lowbrow humor, right? So highbrow humor is where somebody tells you a joke and you have to think through the joke and then you laugh. Lowbrow humor is like Jackass or the Three Stooges, where you just laugh immediately. So eyebrows, the reason that term is there, because high eyebrows, it takes them time to make a decision, versus like you have a low brow, you make decisions fast and you understand things very fast.
Yes.
Right. And then you've got the double threat of, you have high ears and low eyebrows, so you understand things visually and auditorily very fast. So you're like a double threat. So the big frustration with you is, why don't people understand as fast as I do?
Yes.
Right. So yeah.
Freak, guys. Are you not like that? You can't just make that up.
Right.
And anybody that knows me personally, like I'm just a fast learner. Like you tell me to do something once, I'm like copy paste, done, boom. And that's what made me good at sales.
Right.
I was able to go in, watch somebody do it, then repeat it the very next door, and then they were like, wow, and I get sales. I just learned it quick.
Yes. And that's why people always think, oh, is this like the show Lie to Me? And that's micro expressions in the face. And the reason I don't study on that is because I don't want to be so focused on looking, trying to wait for you to make some move. I like things that are resting facial features.
Resting, yeah, take a picture of me,
Yes.
send it to you,
Right.
and I can tell you all about them.
Absolutely.
So you have the eyes shape.
Right.
What else?
Then the eye angle. So do I
Angle,
start with the
yeah.
downside? Do I start with the positive side? Or is it just, I talk about both pros and cons,
Yep.
right? Then I'll go down and I go to lip next, because if I can see the person's upper lip, like we both have facial.
Yeah.
But if you can see the lip, this tells you, do I need to keep it strictly business until they talk about personal stuff? Or if I don't talk about personal stuff because they have a very large upper lip and I don't ask them personal questions, and let's say I make a sale and I didn't ask them, then I completed a transaction, but they're going to feel used.
Yeah.
So I'll look here and think, okay, do I ask them personal questions or do I keep it strictly business?
That's interesting. And
Yeah.
an upper lip, I mean, especially in females, I mean, you add Botox to the equation.
Right.
What happens there? Does it actually change how they want it? Or is it just
yes.
faking?
So women have always had the advantage of,
Yeah.
they've used makeup to enhance facial features,
Yeah.
right? So they can make their cheeks look wider, they can make their lids look fuller. Red lipstick has been associated with femininity for forever.
Long time,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, so that's why that plastic surgery to have your lips done is so popular right now. Nobody knew why, but that's the entire reason
Is because
why.
it makes it more personable. It makes
Yes.
it less business, more relatable.
Yep. And it's mainly the upper lip. And so it's basically, if we say, hey, your big mouth, then you like to talk, right? If you see a small mouth, those people don't like to talk. So that's why people go and get their lips enhanced, is because they want to be more approachable.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so do you feel like our subconscious has picked up on things like that throughout our just natural communication? We're just not consciously competent of things like that? Like you said
100%.
about the villain and the non-villain?
Yeah.
Like if you were to go and look at a cartoon character, I'm sure the princess has bigger lips, and I'm sure that the villain has a very tight upper lip.
Tight upper lip, pointed, angled features, because who would you rather go pet, a Doberman or a Bulldog, right? So rounded features are softening features versus angled features we're like, ooh, a little bit scared of. But yeah, why do you think when you watch a TV show and the character doesn't fit right, you're just like, oh, this is a horrible movie? Because whoever did the casting for that unconsciously knows how to pick the right person to look like the character of the book. And again, how did they do that? Well, they read the script and what is the character that they want, and then they look for who matches it. So going back to what we talked about, authors and artists who've been doing paintings for hundreds and thousands of years, they had to draw the person, right? So we've all seen through paintings, through those busts when you go to museums and stuff, how to understand people, but this was literally courses that were taught. And the reason why it got taken out of academia is at the same time that it was there, first they called it a science, and it's not, because science has to be absolutes. It has to work 100% of the time, and it doesn't. But is it high 90s? Hell yeah, it is. But it was at the same time as phrenology, which is bumps on the head. So what the difference is physiognomy is the art of understanding someone based on their facial features. This bump on your head says you're a criminal, so we have to throw you in prison. So it tried to classify people and judge them. And face reading is the complete opposite. It's about understanding versus judgment.
Yeah, assuming you did this.
Exactly. Right.
So yeah, so obviously if you're listening to this, like think about this for a second. You're sitting down with a customer and you're like, cool, I need to talk about the negative versus the positive first. You're sitting down with the customer. Looks like they're more closed-lipped. That means I need to be a little bit more to the point, business, less rapport. Looks like they're big lip. Looks like their eyes are, eyelids are this, meaning they're more hey, all the neighbors are doing this, versus small eyelid. It's like, nobody cares about that for neighbors. Like I'm my own person. You know what I mean? Like thinking like that would be a one leg up advantage to speaking and singing the song and dance that the customer wants.
Right. So let's say, for example, you're talking about the upper eyelid, right? Since you brought that up. So if they have a big fuller upper lid, well, once we get started, what we're going to do is we say that inclusive language. But if they don't have a lot of upper eyelid, then you reverse it. You say, well, once I get started on your house, later you will see, because that's how they think, is in you do
I
your thing.
and you.
Yes, exactly.
I love that.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Okay, you said something about my forehead. What's the forehead something?
Right, so there's 3 different basic shapes of forehead. So there's rounded, which is outside the box thinker. So rounded, you think outside the box. There's a slanted forehead, and if it's slanted forehead, is where it angles back just a little bit, and you can imagine data sticking to that forehead, right? And those are people who, once they see something done, then they can easily repeat those things. And then the last one you have is more of a straight up and down forehead. So straight up and down is almost like you have to put a ladder up against it, and they need each step independently. And as they learn one thing, then they learn another. Then
they're progressive learner. It's
exactly.
like, don't just give them it all at once. It's like,
exactly.
Give them it in sequence.
Right.
I like that.
And so you said earlier, like once you see something done, you can easily control, copy, paste, whatever, right? And then, so if I kept making you do the same repetitive thing over and over again, that's going to frustrate you.
Yeah.
But somebody whose forehead's straight up and down, that's actually how they learn things.
So if I'm a manager and I'm looking at my sales rep, I'm like, okay, I can quickly identify, 1, how much rapport and how much we do you need to be.
Absolutely.
2, how quick of a learner could you be?
Right.
It's like, I'm going to bore this person where I'm going to be way over this person's head if I go way too fast.
Correct.
Hey, you, I understand. Let's just go through this one thing at a time. Yep. Hey, you, let's go through this repetitively. For me, I'm like, why do we keep repeating the same thing?
Exactly.
It's like, you idiot. I get it.
So imagine our faces are a map that tell us where everybody's been. So it's not there are lines and things that will tell you, like if there's a horizontal line here, it's called an Einstein line. So if you see that on somebody and it's really deep, you know that they have to dive in deep to things. So they don't like bullet points, but if they've got a fairly smooth
You don't have an
forehead-
Einstein line, right?
No, I've got all kinds of broken
Yeah, you
ones.
got broken lines everywhere.
Yeah, because I like to learn a little bit about a lot of things versus super deep. Face reading is the thing I understand the most, but I pick up a new book all the time. Like, well, you go home and they're like, okay, you look at my Amazon account, what do I buy? Books are like the main thing, because I always want to learn something new. But I'll see on doctors and attorneys a deep line across here.
Because they're just so dive into that specialty or that thing.
So it's funny, I was at the Ritz in Dallas a month or 2 ago, and I was sitting outside, and I started talking to people next to me with my friends and everything. I'm like, oh, da-da-da, and they're like, what do you do? And I explained it, and everybody's always like, oh, hold on. Because as soon as you say facial analysis or face reading, then they think, oh, can you read palms too?
Yeah, you're like, what's my fortune?
Exactly. What's my horoscope? Exactly.
Yeah.
And I said, well, for example, you've got this deep line right here, and when it's that deep and it's that pronounced, it's usually a sign of an engineer, an attorney, or a doctor. And his wife started laughing. She's like, he's a doctor. So you can make those leaps once you understand what each of the feature means, but it's rare that it actually defines a career, but that's one of the ones that you can tell that's deep, intense, Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours of study type thing.
I love that.
Yeah.
You said something about jawline, ears.
So the stronger the jaw is, you think of it like a dog latching in or like a vice grip, right? So the stronger the jaw is, the more once they make up their mind, it's held again to make their mind or to change their mind. So when you're talking with someone, I need to give them the information and to a point that they latch into what my product is, right? So that if anybody else comes and knocks on their door or anything else, why are they going to stick with my product? Or if they've already said, oh, I already have somebody who does that, then I have to bring in a whole armory of what I need to get them to change their mind, because they're not going to waffle, right? They just latch in, and once they make their mind up, they're good. So how do you pry that grip loose?
Interesting.
Oh yeah.
Okay, guys, if you're listening to this, first off, go give Brian Galke a follow. Subtle Skills on Instagram, on YouTube. Like, you've got tons of resources out there.
Right.
But I kind of want to shift gears, because
Absolutely.
I got two because I was like, faces can change.
Absolutely.
Which is interesting. So, meaning personality. So my brother, I'm going to use this as a case. So he found a guy that did a facial reading where he sent him a photo of him. He spent 2 hours breaking down him.
Right.
And he was like, everything was so spot on. Everything was, like you said, it's not superficial level of like, you find love one day. It's like,
you've lost someone with the name of M.
It's
like, oh, Mom, Mary.
And then he sent a picture of his wife, and it was 2 hours of them ripping her apart. Like, it was really positive for him.
Yeah.
And it was really negative for her. And she got really defensive. And I was like, and I watched you do this when you're like, hey, I don't mean to be rude with this, but you tend to have this, and you tend to have this. And it's like, and so I watched you ream 2 people, and they're like, yeah, but, and I'm like, well, how did he know? And I know, so therefore it's true. It's like, so I guess the question is, let's say you're not happy with maybe some of the attributes. Let's say you're like, yeah, like give some examples of like where you've maybe had that hard conversation with somebody. Like you tend to have this, and you send.
So the downward eyes, right? So you mentioned pessimists earlier. I actually won't say that. I'll say they can anticipate problems.
Okay.
So it's the old, if you've ever heard the joke, I'm not a cashier, I'm a financial transaction specialist.
Just the rewording of, yeah.
Exactly. You're saying the same thing, but you put a better spin on it. So unless there's something that is completely negative or is something that's dangerous, that there's not really a nice way to say it. So if you see these lines in my ears right here, those are called heart lines. And those tend to be indicative of somebody who will have heart thing concerns to look at. So if you see that on somebody's ears, I'll say, hey, this one's not so much fun like all the other stuff. If you have these, you just need to make sure you're regularly getting your blood work done, because this is called a heart line. And what it is they saw it on so many different people over time. That's how it got classified. And it's true. Like I have high cholesterol, right? And so that's one of the things I have to keep an eye on.
That has to do with a line in your ear.
Yes, it has to do with a line in your ear.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you look at the picture of me at early on 18, I didn't have it, right? But then, yeah, so your face, again, is always adapting, always changing. So there are some down things. And if you think of vampires, witches, everything that we've seen in horror movies, what do they have? Pointed chin.
Yeah.
What do they have? Downturned nose. So if you meet somebody who's like that, guess what? They kind of think about only what they want. So because I have a 5-year-old, she loves Megamind, the cartoon, right? So what is Megamind? He's not the big strong villain. He outthinks and creates things. But what does he have? Huge forehead, right?
Yeah.
And then what does he have? He's got a downturned nose because he only cares about what he wants, not is he hurting anybody else. So if you see somebody with a downturned nose, that means they kind of think about only what they want instead of what is going on with anybody else or how is it affecting it. So they're the ones that you could say the phrase, to make an omelet, you got to break a few eggs, because that's how they think.
Interesting.
So you can just kind of adapt around those kind of negative features and just figure out, okay, well, now I know that they think about only how they benefit from it, so I'm not going to talk about how everybody else is going to benefit, right?
Okay, so 2 follow-up questions to this.
Sure.
Race, meaning I was in Guatemala, they have distinct facial features.
Absolutely.
Versus I'm in Spain, versus I'm in China, versus I'm in, you know what I mean? So it's like, does that play into this at all?
It absolutely does. So if you go into a lot of Asian cultures, there's not a lot of upper eyelids. So it's what you call a non-read based on what you see geographically in that area. So everything is in proportion to your face. So for example, if we talk about, are you more visual because you have larger eyes, or are you more auditory because you have larger ears, right? You're not doing a direct comparison because everybody's ear is biologically larger than their eyes, but you look in proportion to your face.
Okay.
Yes. So when you go there, you look at somebody.
Because Asians have smaller faces.
Right. So it's in proportion to the size of their own face.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, because like Asians have squinty eyes naturally, right?
Not necessarily.
But like
we think that because we don't see a lot of upper eyelid.
Oh, okay.
Right. So it's not really a squinty thing. It's just lack of an upper eyelid in a lot of people. Then you go, oh, okay. Then that's what's called a non-read. And the same thing is every facial feature can tell you something, but does it stand out? Like if I was to draw a character.
Oh yeah, caricature drawers.
Right. Would you enhance that in the picture, or would you just make it the same size and kind of ignore it? So that's why I'd love to go and look anywhere that has characters that are there. Go and look and see what they will over exaggerate on somebody, because they are the best people on earth of picking up facial features, because they look at your face and go, oh yeah, that's a little bit larger than something else.
That's different. Let's like make that even bigger to make this interesting.
Exactly.
Okay, so second question to that is, if somebody had the pointed nose and the pointy chin, and they're now aware of that, and they're like, shoot, I don't want to be this way. Right. Can they change? I mean, like, is that a changeable thing now that they're conscious to it?
Yes. So everything can change over time. It depends on how long they've been there. But you can look at, here's a perfect example. Why don't we recognize stroke victims? And we don't recognize them because they lose all the muscle on this side of the face, right? So that just goes to show you, it is muscle and it can move and up and down everything. So if you see someone who has a stroke, one side of their face quits working. Or the reason that we don't recognize someone if we go to an open casket funeral is because all that muscle tension is gone. Oh yeah,
you're like, that's not my mom.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting.
Because all those muscles are gone. And what is Botox? You asked about this earlier.
Yeah.
Botox is just paralyzing of the muscles, and that's why the wrinkles go away. The muscles don't go away, and that's why you have to go back and get Botox done over and over again.
Yeah, it's just stunning.
Because the muscle memory comes right back as soon as it can move and flex again. So your face angles can change. So for example, like right here, I have an angled eyebrow.
Yeah, you have a...
Yeah. And I didn't get this until I became a corporate trainer. So this is the professional side of a face and this is the personal side. And an easy way to remember it is if I say, hey, are you married? It's a personal question. And this is the hand a wedding ring would be on in the US. So when you're looking at somebody, you got to figure out, are you talking to their personal side, where a wedding ring would be, or their professional side, which is their business or external world. And so depending on what they're changing, that's why, again, we say, you know, hey, once you were in something you weren't happy with, and people say later on, hey, you seem a lot happier, they're picking up on those changes in your face.
I have a side smile quite a bit. Is that anything?
Yes, so it depends, like you're smiling more on your personal side.
Yeah, I go this way.
Right, and that's because that's where you're more jovial and you're more happy is on your personal side, because sometimes work is just harder, right?
Interesting.
And sometimes you have to bite down, you have your grit on your personal or on your professional side, and so the smile's bigger. And you can actually look at someone and they'll have a larger lip to a degree on one side, or like you said, if you've ever heard somebody say, well, don't speak out of both sides of your mouth. Yeah. That's why the phrase comes in, is because we have personal a personal side and professional side.
Yeah, because I was thinking about that. I was like, well, yes, sometimes it's easier for your neck to turn one way, or for your smile to naturally go one way, or you tend to like, or what about like scope of you're looking through an eye of a gun. Does that have anything to do with this? Like, you know, I'm right-eyed or left-eyed through a bow.
That's mostly just, are you right-handed or left-handed?
Okay, more right-handed, left-handed.
Yeah, so what a lot of the facial features are they right brain or left brain? So my mentor goes deep into the, you know, what side of brain is controlling the muscle and everything, and I don't want to overwhelm people like that. I just like to teach it, and I've changed the phrasing for things like a rounded eyebrows, I think about the people around them, right? Or an angled eyebrows,
to make it easy to memorize it.
Exactly.
Because I want to be able to quickly analyze some basics to get my ground right. Because if you're sitting there like, hold on, let me get you.
Let me think.
This is gonna make it awkward.
Straight eyebrow mean?
Yeah.
If you know straight eyebrows get straight to the point, then you automatically know, and you say, oh, straight to the point eyebrow.
Yeah.
Or, what's my angle eyebrow?
That's so cool.
That's what I changed about what he taught me versus my own spin on it. So yeah.
So let's shift gears a little bit, because obviously you speak on this subtle skills and the facial analytics and readings a lot, and that's what people know you for.
Correct.
But that's not your identity. That is not just you. Like you said, you're a corporate trainer in sales. You know, been
vice president. You name it. What do you want to know?
Yeah, that's what I was like. You just went through a divorce. Like you run business. I mean, I think it's so funny. Like people when they interview me, they're like, door to door. Tell us about knocking. I'm like, dude, like I do so much other stuff than just this. Like I was like, I don't ever want to just be in that box. So I'll give you the opportunity. Like, what is something else that you are really passionate about or love to talk about that maybe people don't ask you?
Sure. I love to travel. That is the one thing that I always, one of the things that attracted me to my now ex-wife was she had more passport stamps than I did, right? So the love of travel and seeing new things is 100% on my list. I was in New Orleans this past weekend for a trade show, and my favorite thing was taking people to Lafitte's Blacksmith Shop. So if you ever go to New Orleans, it's the oldest continuously run bar in the United States, and it's off the beaten path. It's on Bourbon Street, but you have to go way down Bourbon Street to know where it is. And so every time I go to New Orleans, I just love to go and sit there because people have to know where it is. And I've seen stormtroopers come in there. I've seen people come in and take their wedding photos after they got married in there. They always have some type of party or what do you call it? A pub crawl will stop in there. So I love those little off the beaten path things.
Dude, I was in New Orleans. Same story, dude. I'm like, let's go to a crawdad or a crawfish broil, right? Yeah. So I Googled this place. It was like Tracy's Crawfish. And I was like, okay, I've never heard of it. Like, we're trying to find the off the beaten path stuff.
Yes.
We show up to an apartment complex and we're like, what the heck? We ring the buzzers. No one's answering. And then finally we talk to somebody. Where's this Tracy's place? Oh, that place doesn't exist. Well, then you go around the corner, 3 stoplights to the left. Doesn't even show up on the map. We find this place that was just like so good. And to the point where the locals are like, you don't look like you're from here. How'd you find this place? And like, they're like, this is the best place south of the Mississippi. You know what I mean? Like they were just like, and we were like, well, how do we find, like, that was the coolest New Orleans story ever. Like, love that.
So I'll love to even go on. I will do some touristy things like in Charleston, in New Orleans, I'll do the ghost tours or whatever, because you learn about the history of the city while you're doing these walking tours. And that's the cool reason to sign up for ghost tours. Not that I'm worried that ghosts are going to come out, but it tells you the history of a city explained over time. And so, for example, if you've ever taken the ghost tour in New Orleans or the vampire tour, you'll go to certain places and they'll say, okay, see how that window is bricked up? That's because when the person died, they were afraid that they were going to come back and try and get into their old room, so they would brick up the window to keep the person out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I have a bucket list mastermind you should look into.
Okay.
So 2 to 3 times a year, I take people on epic trips. We just went to Egypt, going to Peru to do like a cool ceremonial thing in October. Next year, we're doing heli skiing, great white diving with in South Africa
Nice.
And so just, we'll keep you in the loop.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm like high vibe people on dope trips. That's what I like to do.
That's just it. What I love about travel is we were all raised in a small bucket, right? And then we get the opportunity to travel. And our generation is the first one to really be able to go anywhere we want in the world.
Yeah.
Right? You think not that long ago, you couldn't go into Germany without a major visa or anything. And we have the opportunity to go anywhere and see anything. And one of the things I've always used to do is I know where I'm going to land and when I'm going to leave. And I wouldn't make restaurant plans. I have to go to this Michelin restaurant or anything like that. I'm going to walk around until I find something I like and I'm going to pop in.
I did that last night in Sugar House. Like, how'd you find this place? I don't know. I just trusted God and I went around and parked and then started walking.
Yeah, I do that all the time. Like somebody I know just today, she landed in Boston. I'm like, you need to go to the Beantown Pub, which is the only place you can have a Samuel Adams while you're looking over across the street at Samuel Adams' grave.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I found that by walking by myself on the Freedom Trail. And so when I go places, I will put on the miles. Like you'd think I'd be in better shape with traveling more, right? Because I walked like almost 30,000 steps when I was in New Orleans. And that's because while I didn't have to be at the trade show, I went and walked to the market and I went to go visit one of my favorite artists out there. So I went by and I bought another painting for my house. And I just like walking people back and forth to different places. So I like to go and explore. And I always knew I didn't want to live in a small suburb and just only be at home. And there's some people who love that, and that's completely fine. It's just not meant for me.
Well, this is what comes down to the self-experience in the book I'm writing right now. Is it's like, that's why I was interested to bring you on the show. Is obviously, like, for all the listeners, good job, guys. Absolutely. Got something out of it. But I was like selfish, and I'm over here like, I'm writing a book on this.
Yeah.
And it goes to the point of, it's funny, like they're reading my numerology and my astrology like the other day, and I was like really studying, like I'm a Capricorn and I have double Capricorn in me, and they're like, you're this, and then they started reading my numerology, and they were like, you really like to travel, and you really like to, you aren't a homebody, like you need to be out and about,
right?
And some people are like, I could never live like that. I'm like, dude, I'm just built this way. Like your face is built the way your face is built, and your zodiac and your makeup. And I'm like, I don't judge you for wanting to be a homebody and home every night at 6.
Right.
I just couldn't live like that. And what was interesting is, like, in my marital relationship, she was very much so, everything needs to be in order.
Right.
I want a 9-to-5 husband that does normal things and lives a normal life, and Netflix is, and I'm like, I haven't watched a show in who knows how long in my house. Like, I'm like, I'm gonna go on hike, I'm gonna get out of here. Like,
well, it's funny, when I walked in here, I was like, I don't even see a single TV in most of the places we've walked, right? I looked around because would be a room that a lot of people would put a big, huge TV right there. And don't get me wrong, I'll watch TV occasionally, but I would rather be learning something.
Me too.
One of the things I used to get in trouble for when I was married was, if we were like, she used to like to watch Handmaid's Tale or whatever it is, and I can pay attention to it and still read a book.
Oh yeah, I'm like, if I'm gonna watch a movie, I'm like doing something. Like I don't think like I'm finishing emails or I'm doing something. Like it's like, and what's interesting though, so this is a interesting topic, because I think a lot of people don't give themselves permission for either side of that, and that's why I was like, oh, we can connect on this travel thing. Like I've been to 40 countries and like love to travel, and so it's like, for me, I think the face, and this is what the book is about. That's why I asked you, I was like, what else are you passionate about? Because I was like, I don't know if you could tell that from a facial. Like, is there an attribute on face that says he likes adventure versus he likes security?
So they're nostrils. So the smaller the nostrils are, if I tell you, hey, go ahead and take a deep breath, go ahead. We go through our nose, right? So if you have small nostrils, you're thinking, oh crap, I don't have enough air. And so when you see small nostrils on somebody, they tend to think in terms of scarcity. I don't have enough. I need to pack. I can't do this. I can't spend that money because they can't get enough air.
Oh my gosh.
So when you meet somebody like that, you have to talk in terms of why it's okay to invest in what you're doing or whatever.
Look at my nostrils, dude. I have a deviated septum, one really small one and one big one.
When did you get that fixed?
I don't know. I don't know why it's been like that.
Yeah,
like I can't.
because you can get more air in. So yeah, it's kind of crazy once you start learning all
No, I
these
never
things.
got it fit. Like, it's just this one's small, this
Yeah.
one's big. And,
Yeah.
and that I honestly can sense in my own energetic, like genealogy, like I'm talking like generational scarcity
Yeah.
has creeped in my family.
Well, that's because everything what we're born with is what we genetically inherit.
Yes.
What happens is what we experience in life is epigenetics, and that's what changes our face.
Whoa, guys,
Yeah.
did you just hear that? What we are born with is genetics.
Right.
What we inherit through stories and experiences, epigenetics.
Well, and we all see it in everyday life.
Oh,
Like you see the guy who goes to the gym who only does upper body and has never done a squat in his life, right?
Yeah.
Or nothing with legs. You don't go, oh, that's genetics, right? That's epigenetics, the muscles he chose to move in his life, and that's how his body adjusts.
Wow.
Yeah. So we see
Wow.
it in different things all the time, right? But we never have been formally taught this. Like I said, and it's taught to attorneys for jury consulting, things like that. And what I found is it changed my life, and I want to change other people's lives because I've been that introvert who's stuck in your own head. Like, I love to travel, but I used to sit in the corner and not talk to anybody. And now when I go travel to people, when I sit down, all I do is for a first second, I just look at their face and think, oh, I wonder who they are.
yeah.
And I end up talking to them. So a crazy, ironic story is when I was leaving Las Vegas, I was kind of figuring out New Orleans this last weekend. I was trying to figure out where am I going to eat, and I ended up sitting next to these people, and they got a bottle of champagne, and I just started talking to them. I looked, and I saw the differences in their faces and everything. I ended up just talking to them, right? Because then I ask a question, and then you become friends at the bar, which is why I always sit at the bar, right?
Do you
Because
tell people you're a facial reader
I
quickly?
wait until I talk to them,
Okay, I was
and
gonna
they
say,
ask me, what do I do?
Forewarning, yeah.
Because if you do, the people are like, oh, great.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah. So
yeah.
once you bond with people, then you can tell them, and that's actually why I call the company Subtle Skills. Is when I'm teaching people, you never have to tell anybody what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I do for obvious reasons. Well, we end up talking the whole time until we get on the flight, and then guess who I'm sitting next to on the flight? They would literally went exit row right next to me.
Oh my god.
So I'm like, obviously we're meant to be friends here, and we talked, and she ends up, she teaches reporters how to become more approachable when they're on the news, so that
Which
they
has
can
everything
become
to do
an
with what you want
anchor.
to do.
Yeah, so life is funny, but yeah, that's why I always sit at the bar, because I'm used to traveling by myself. That not a lot of upper eyelid this is what I want to do, and that was actually one of the things that in my marriage she had a fuller eyelid. She was always thinking in terms of we, and I have not a lot of upper eyelid, and I was thinking in terms of this is what I want to do. You brought up something I want to go back to, and that is giving yourself permission to be who you are. When I give you the title of the book, it's going to sound kind of weird, but it's No More Mr. Nice Guy. And it's actually, for women who are listening also, women can listen to it, but it's based more for men because the guy who wrote it was a therapist for men. And all it is it's okay to have permission to do what you want, because when you fulfill yourself, you then can fill up other people.
That's the book I'm writing. No
Yeah.
more necessary. I'm going to read that for some research purposes,
Oh,
but that's so good.
Read chapter 11 specifically, because it gets past, I'll occasionally listen to that one where it's just giving you permission that it's okay to chase the things that you want to do for you.
Yes.
Because when you're happy, then you can be a better person around other people. And I was in the same type of marriage before. She wanted a 9-to-5 husband, and I had that job, but I always wanted more. So even when we'd go on family walks, I'd keep an AirPod in, and I would listen. If I listened, you name it, Ty Lopez, Brad, all these people, Tony Robbins, when I was growing up. And so I can go on a walk and enjoy it, and I'll keep one ear out for the conversation if we're talking. But I always have one AirPod in because I always feel like I have to be learning something else.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel happy. Books, television shows, documentaries. Last night I bought on Amazon Prime, there's the Napoleon Hill's 12 Laws or whatever that he basically used to write Think and Grow Rich. Well, I watched that to go to bed last night.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So that's just kind of who I am.
Well, this is good, guys. And I hope you guys got some value out of all of this, because the reality is these subtle skills can pay off dividends from a personal happiness and fulfillment and understanding self,
Absolutely.
all the way to better relationships and understanding the people that are around you, to transactional relationships that will help you show up better for how they're looking for a relationship to happen, whether that's short term or long term.
Right.
And I think that, a lot of people are like, wow, this is like crazy and deceiving. And I'm like, you could interpret it as that way, or it's like, you could just say, I'm seeing the things that probably the conscious mind has never felt like they even knew existed. And hopefully now we brought some light to that.
Yeah. So people are saying, oh, it's deceiving or anything of manipulation. I use this perfect story, right? And that is, I used to be the worst traveler there was, because I used to think everywhere I go, everyone should speak English, right? And if they don't, I'll just speak English louder. because that's the way you should travel, right? That's the worst way to travel. But what changed my life with traveling is everywhere I go, I learn basic phrases. Please, thank you, good morning, good evening, where's the bathroom, right? Important one. When you do that, when you try, people know that you try, and it changes the experience. And that's all it is. It's just trying to interact with somebody better.
Yes.
And when you do, that's what creates that connection that we all want.
Love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Well,
So,
thank you so much for being on the show.
yes, thank you for having me. Look, and getting to be here and see your awesome place.
Now he's gonna go on a hike, and I was like, dude, just hang out. Like you can come to yoga tonight if you want. Like
you have to get some stuff done, but I do like yoga. Yeah.
But no, thank you guys for listening, and again, we love the feedback. So go leave a review, go give some comments to Brian, and just be like, Brian, this podcast was dope.
Yeah.
Right there in the podcast app, and share this. And we love to hear your guys' feedback on content that you guys want to hear more of. And we'll see you next week. Like we're gonna be jamming in the mastermind.
Absolutely.
So it'll be fun.
You get to see it all in action.
I know. Yeah. We'll do it when there's more people. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. You guys are awesome. Much love. We'll see you on the next episode.